Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of The Magicians. A great finale, a great episode in general. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously, they're coming up with a plan of like, okay, so how do we handle this situation? Like, we're going beat by beat, like what each team is going to divide up and do. I thought it was interesting because when Plum shows up, she's the one that's kind of like being like, oh, like, I don't think we should do. Because at first I was like, oh, like you saying that, like, did they actually call you to be here? Or was it just a situation of like, oh, because it just seemed interesting. I was like, why is she kind of so against this planet all of a sudden and stuff like that? So I wasn't sure about. But then they're just kind of like, yeah, no, we're going to go through with it. But obviously that plays into the episode later on, but I'll get to that soon enough. But obviously it's like, oh, we do this and that. It's like, well, we need a traveler. Well, we can't use Penny. Well, we can't use Plum either because she travels through time. So it's like, what are we going to do about that? I'll get to that solution soon. Well, I'll go straight to that solution. It's like, who do we get to help? Hyman. But Hyman doesn't want to help because for him it's a situation of like, you're literally asking me to go to Fillory and try and teleport people out before it blows up. Is there any guarantee I won't get hit in the head? He's like, no, I'm gonna go back to drinking. And then Charlton kind of comes up with an idea and ask Elliot to kind of pass along the idea. It's like, all right, Charlton's suggesting, why don't you go back to being like, basically Charlton take over your body and you can go back to being a ghost and everything. And it's just kind of like, because initially Elliot's like, there's no way he's going to be down for this. And they're about to add more to it, but he's like, sweet. And I'm like, because he's such a damn pervert. Because being in his body, like, because last episode made it seem like, oh, he's finally found his place and everything. He's going to get used to being in a body and stuff like that. It's like, no, he's like, bump that. I want to go back to being your friendly neighborhood pervert ghost. So I just thought that was interesting, and he was all for it. But then he was like, on one condition, you basically have to do super nasty and naughty stuff with my body. I'm like, that's such a weird request, only from Hyman. Only from Hyman, but I love that that's what you're getting out of this. And I love that when it actually goes through, it's like, hey, he's in Charlton's in Hyman's body, and I love the whole situation of Hyman being nearby. He's like, best episode. I think he said like the best episode ever or something like that, and I loved it. I'm just like, you are such a weirdo. So obviously, there's a whole situation with Julia, her water bro. They take her to Breakville to get examined, but at the same time, Katie's bringing Fog there, our Fog, because the moment Fog, 17 ended up getting put into the Ethereum, like our Fog ended up getting spit out. He's kind of a little loopy and crazy. But at the same time, Julia ends up giving birth, and obviously Lipson's there to kind of perform the surgery to kind of cut the connection and stuff like that. But Fog snapped. He grabbed the seed from Katie, Finn, and Zelda, I believe. And at the same time, he went back and he randomly cut the connection between Julia and the baby, and Julia kind of passes out, and it's like, oh shit, looks bad. And then immediately it's like Penny's like, go back in time, we have to fix this, we have to save Julia because her organs are shutting down. And then we get that nice twist where like Plum is like, we already did it. It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, this is already, so technically we're in timeline 41 now. I'm like, that's so interesting. I was like, that's so neat that you did that. It's like, yeah, like apparently things, because she said like things actually got worse in this timeline faster. I was like, that's so, and it's like in retrospect it makes, that's why she was trying to just like get them to not do what they were planning, because she already knew things could go sideways, but she couldn't necessarily bring up the whole, yeah, I've already been through this, because it's a thing of like, you want to make micro enough changes that it makes things for the better, because if you do too much, things could turn out so much worse, because you could end up, instead of like doing a small correction, you could do a major overcorrection and shit goes super sideways. So, and obviously it was also interesting too, because this allowed Plum to actually meet her grandmother, so I thought that was pretty neat. But also having to explain to Jane, it's like, yeah, our plan is also to blow up Fillory, which is also Jane, because obviously Fillory holds a special place for Jane. Obviously this place holds a special place for her and her siblings, and so for it to kind of come down to that, but I think she accepts it because she knows like, hey, what this represents and what this means in the grand scheme of things, the sacrifice is necessary. But even she's like, this time house, like the loop in time will keep me safe even if Fillory's gone, but it just means it's going to be a little bit harder to potentially find me if you need me. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But then it clicks that, like, wait a minute. Fog, why would he do all that he did? Oh, right, because Fog remembers every timeline. I was like, dude, because that doesn't come up that often, so you do forget. It wouldn't even cross my mind to think that that's why I was thinking, like, because I was like, that didn't seem like a Fog 17 thing to do. I was like, so I was like, why did he do it? It's like, because he'd been through, he saw the different timelines, so Lipson gives him, it's like, all right, this is actually legal. What she said, like a handful, over like a dozen countries, like 14 countries, I think she said. Basically, you're going to use a cat to basically take all the kind of like craziness that is like from the Ethereum realm. You have to like put it into a cat, and they're like, oh, the cat seems like okay. It's like, no, the cat is actually losing its shit right now, and Fogg is like, being collected. He's back to himself, being like, okay, this is actually what happened. The fact of the matter is, he hid the seed in his lab, but also he brings up the fact is why he did what he did to Julia is because if Lipson had gone through what she had done, both Julia and the baby would have died. But because of his quick cut like that, it makes it so it's transplantable. They now, instead of it being connected to Julia, she will eventually recover, but you now just have to attach it to someone else, someone who can handle the powers of a traveler being able to read minds. Who else but a former traveler, well, having that ability himself, that make Penny the perfect person for this. So I thought that was such an interesting aspect to the whole thing. And obviously I love Lipson coming in and being like, oh yeah, here's your baby Eleanor. And it's like, I don't remember naming our baby that. It's like, because we didn't. And it's like, she's like, it's usually custom of like naming, some people name their baby after the doctor that gave birth to him. It's a thing. It happens. It's like, sure, we believe you. But then like Penny is reading her mind and it's like, baby's name is Hope, which is like, that name comes up a lot just because obviously it makes me think of Hope Michelson on like Legacies and Originals, that whole thing. But it's also like, he's like, yes, we can give her the middle name Quentin. I was like, oh, that's cute. Because even later on, I'm skipping around a little bit, he refers to her HQ. I was like, oh, that's so adorable. It's like that way, like Quentin kind of lives on a little bit too. I think that's neat. Of course you'd want to name your daughter, give her your BF's like your BFF's name. Yeah, so I just thought that was kind of like a neat little element. But now instead of Julia being able to hear the voices, now Penny can, because obviously his mom wasn't a traveler, so it drives you crazy. Julia isn't one. Might be a magician and everything, but that's still a lot. But if you're a traveler, you know how to handle that. So it's like anytime he holds Hope, he'll be able to have that ability back. So, it gives him, obviously, it's like, wait, but if you can do that, that means that's not the only thing you got back. So I thought that was kind of neat. At the same time, everything, obviously, they've got this map and everything to be like, okay, so this is where this lets us see all the people in Fillory and let us know when they've potentially been on the got put on the Seahorse ship. And so it becomes a thing of like, all right, so now once we kind of work this out, we can, now we can start getting people through, but it's kind of a slow process. At the same time, Elliot disappears. I'm like, wait, so he's just, because I was like, wait, was that part of the plan? It's like, they're like, no, like only Felorians are supposed to be up there. So I was like, what the hell happened here? Oh, your boy Rupert had summoned him because he needs his help, because it's like, I'm gonna open the door long enough to get Lance, and then you just close the door back, because, and I even like that moment between Elliot being like, the reason why you brought me here is because like there is a part of you that doesn't want to do this, so you want someone to stop you. It's like, if I really wanted to be stopped, I wouldn't have casted the spell like 20 minutes ago. So Lance comes through and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be bad. He's like, no worry, you can, I mean, maybe that's a rule that came up earlier in the show and I just didn't remember that. Like if the dead touch the living, they automatically die. I didn't remember that being a thing, but maybe it wasn't. Like I said, I just don't remember. But he's like, no, you can touch me. I was like, oh, this is going to end bad. Like, it's going to go wrong in some shape or form. I'm like, how? And then it's like, oops, sykes, I'm not Lance. I'm freaking the Beast. I was like, what? I was like, I love that twist. I mean, it makes sense in the grand scheme of things, because like Martin was the first main antagonist of the show, so for him to kind of return like this is pretty badass. Even the fact, I mean, when you actually even think about it, let's not forget Rupert's a Chatwin too, so it kind of came full circle with the Chatwins in any regard. So I just thought that was kind of like, a nice touch in the grand scheme of things, to make him come back. And the fact is he kind of breaks Elliot's fingers and stuff like that, which is almost makes me think back to like season 1 when he ended up killing Margot and Elliot and Alice and chopped off Penny's hands. It kind of reminded me of that moment. But obviously, he's trying to speak to his brother because it's like, I did try to save you, but the fact is, try to save you from Plover, but the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, I had to protect people from you. So it's just crazy to see this all kind of come full circle like this. And I even love him be so like, wait, aren't you that dude that was with Julia and Quentin, Elliot? Like, how are you actually still alive after all of this? I'm sure Elliot asks himself that every day. Luckily, Rupert was able to get him out of the way. Because the sad thing is, I like it because, like, for I keep doing it, sorry. For Elliot, it's like, he cares about Rupert. It's like, I get it. You're just some poor, dumb, deluded bastard, because, sad thing is, at the end of the day, he did all this for love, so you can't fault him too much. But for him, it's like, I'm not going to die, it's like, yeah, they could rip you apart though, but he's like, because all the dead had ended up getting released and everything, and obviously Martin like made some dealings while he was dead and stuff like that, because apparently Lance might have, he's like, oh, I never actually met Lance, he probably moved on centuries ago, and it's like, right, this entire time you thought you were talking to your love, it's just your brother messing with you. But it's like, they kind of say their goodbyes. I'm like, probably when this planet goes, Rupert probably will die too, because he is tied to the planet. But regardless, so it turns into a thing of Margot, Josh, and Elliot are going to turn back the clock. That's going to be how they blow up. Because I didn't remember that being a thing until they played it at a preview. It's like, right, turning back the clock blows up the planet. I didn't even realize that. Because I was wondering how they were going to go about destroying Fillory. You had an easy way right in front of you, literally set up at the beginning of the season. But I love the whole situation of like, Margot's like, yeah, honestly, I lied about the whole thing about there being a way off. They're like, wait, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, because I knew if someone had to basically over-re-up and do this, because if it did, so it had to be me. I even love the line of like, if there's one thing I learned from Quentin, just one thing, it's, sacrificing yourself for the people you love. I was like, and once again, it just showing you the full growth of Margot. Like, would Margot from season 1 have done this? No, everything that Margot has done over the course of the series, maybe for Elliot, but now it's like, here's this guy that she's in love with and everything too. Like, this is not the Margot we met at the beginning of the series. She's gone through and she's changed. She's grown so much, and just in that moment, it's just like to see it all kind of come full circle like that was just kind of beautiful to see. Like, not even full circle, just see like the progression she's gone through when they make that sacrifice, even giving dude, I skipped over the best part too. I'm sorry. Like, the fact is, she puts her little eye in the little case she got from Santa. We'll talk about that soon. But it gives it to them. It's like, this way I can make sure you guys actually leave before, like, I set everything in motion. So I thought that was neat. But circling back to what I forgot to talk about at the very beginning, freaking Santa. I was like, yeah, we get one last little bit of time with Santa. He's like, oh, yeah. She's like, oh, did I sleep till Christmas? He's like, no. Basically, he gave them Christmas because it's like, considering everything that you and your friends go through, you might not live long enough to actually see Christmas, so I figured I'd hook you up. And he kind of ends up giving everyone gifts and stuff like that. And he ends up revealing a very interesting detail of like, the page that she found, that wasn't from Quentin, that was from him. It's like, but he knew that like Alice needed something to kind of keep her going, so he made it seem like, oh, this is like some last little message from Quentin. Because I was wondering, because I didn't even think about, we still never answered like why Quentin had that, like why that was something he kept. It's like, it was never his. That basically Santa gives people what they need, and he knew Alice needed this to kind of get a little more get up in her step. She needed a quest, so showing that this was never like Quentin's quest to pass on to her. This was always her journey from the beginning. This was always her quest. And it's like, I think, I'm sorry for your loss, but I think Quentin would be proud of who you are, because he's like, I told you basically last season you wanted to go. And she's like, I'm not so sure about that, but it's just like, I think, because Alice is very like hard on herself because of all like the bad stuff she does, and that all kind of plays a role in the episode, but we'll get to that soon enough. Then there's the whole situation of the trio at the library. Like, all right, we're going to do this whole thing, but they can't because Martin shows up, because Alice immediately recognizes his voice, and they try to run, and Zelda gives them time. And I love that what she gives Alice. It's like this speech of like, outer circumstances are always kind of a wild card, but you can always control the ones on the inside. Like, that's something, kind of a lesson that a master magician learns. She always saw the potential in Alice. It's like, you're just like, it's like, so you think I'm ready for that? And she's like, that Alice could do all this with one hand when it comes to casting. But Zelda's like, all you can do is try. And so Zelda, and I love that line from Zelda being like, for a librarian, they don't die, they just relocate. Basically, they get transferred to a new branch, and obviously, like, she shuts down all the nether portals, and leaving Martin kind of stuck here, and he ends up killing her, and it's sad. It's like, damn, because like you also have to think about too. It's like, what about Harriet? And probably like someone would have to eventually later on tell her about what happened to her mom and everything. But to be fair, that line still resonates because it's like, yeah, as a librarian, she will go to the underworld, so there's at least some silver lining with all of that. It's like, oh, it's kind of interesting to think, because it's like, right, because she's been a part of this show since the beginning, so it's kind of crazy to think about that too. You kind of forget that she has been in the show since season 1. It would be interesting too, because obviously she'd end up running into Penny 40, and that their stories being connected the way they are. So it's sad, but at the same time, like, it gives you a little more hope to be like, I think being in an underworld, having all access to all that knowledge and be able to play her role as a librarian, I think, she'll find kind of a bit of her happy place, with it all. I did love that, like, Alice had given her a hug, because despite everything that they've kind of been through, like, I think, because Zelda saw she definitely saw herself in Alice, and I think Alice saw herself in Zelda too, so it's kind of a really nice pairing. Then there's the whole situation with Josh and Elliot. I was actually surprised they actually went through, because I thought they were going to mess with Margot, throw her eye through, and make it seem like they went through, but actually double back for her. But no, they go there, and they're like, and obviously Elliot's worried because he's like, I don't think she's going to make it. Josh is like, you don't know that. Lo and behold, they hear someone pop up behind them. It's like, oh, it's got to be Penny. Penny pops back over, gets Margot, and it's like, he's like, come with me if you want to live. I'm sorry, Josh just wanted me to say that, and it seemed like it was really important to him. I'm like, yay! And obviously, it's crazy to look and see Fillory blow up and everything, getting destroyed like that. It's wild. Because it very much reminds me of, like, Namek from DBZ. Like, it just kind of looks very similar to that. But even the fact is, Margot was so accepting of it that she was just going to eat that perfect sandwich that Josh had made. It was supposed to be for the dude in particular who was supposed to be down there, but he probably already got raptured. So that was just like a neat element of just like everything coming full circle and kind of working together like that. I thought was pretty neat. And even Martin being like, wait, what's happening? It's like, oh, like Fillory is being destroyed. And it's like all your plans to come back and take over Fillory kind of blew up. It's like it's also very befitting because he's the one that was all about making Fillory his own, even though it didn't just belong to the people. So for him to basically all your machinations and everything, it would have been dope to see him kind of come back in a more like heavier villain role. But at the same time, I think it was still nice to kind of see it kind of come full circle, especially for Rupert, and we see him kind of vanish at the end. I'm like, what's that about? But we can only assume Martin is dead. Like, it makes you wonder, once you're dead and you blow up on a planet that's blowing up, like, what happens to you? Does he go back to the underworld, or is he dead? Is he like wiped from existence? I'm curious like how that 100% works. Maybe they've explained that over the course of the series, but that's just something that was kind of flowing through my mind. And so now it comes the time of like, all right, we've got to get prepared with this world seed situation. And Finn is like, oh my God, like, this is my first time casting magic. And Margot's like, you're not going to be casting magic. And she's like, yeah, but I'm still glad to be included. It's like the reason why Katie isn't the one doing it, it's because they need someone there to kind of hold together what is Fillory, because they want to make this new world very similar to Fillory in a sense. And like for her, it's like, if it was me, like it would just, look like something New York related. And obviously Elliot wants to help, but obviously if he uses his fingers, like, it'll kind of backfire. It could be doing permanent damage. But Alice steps up, and I thought it was kind of a neat thing that she said that basically because I love that she kind of gives a speech, and Margot's like, save that for Instagram or Twitter, like save it for like a quote or something like that. But it's like, no, like basically she's like, I have to accept all of myself, the good and the bad, especially the bad. She's like, I think we all need to do that when it comes to like, making this whole thing happen, because basically coming to terms with every aspect of yourself is what's going to make the circumstances within you align so that you can control everything. And so Finn has to talk to the seed and everything. And she talks at first about, she's like, oh, I miss this and this. And it's like, no, don't just describe it. Like, share some memories. And she's like, oh, remember the first time I saw a unicorn, my dad using magic to make a knife, but he didn't show me. And then him giving me away to some stranger. And it's like, oh, ooh. And it's like, for her, she's like, actually, Fillory kind of, it makes me remember that Fillory kind of sucks in her, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, we're supposed to be, it's like, but for her, it's like the thing of like, she kind of realizes she doesn't want to like make a new Fillory exactly. She wants to take the good of Fillory and the good of Earth and kind of put them all together. I thought, and she's like including the movies that she used to watch with Todd, which is like, oh yeah, because I forgot like when you were hiding on Earth, wasn't that back in season 3? Was that season 3? I might have been. I don't know. When she was hanging with Todd, I think it was her and Frail. Were hanging with Todd, watching movies and stuff like that. But taking the best of both worlds, because she was like, because it wasn't just a representation of the world, it was kind of a representation of them, taking the best of them as people as well, and kind of added it to this. And then the world starts cracking, and they disappear. Only people left are Elliot and Katie, and it's like, well, where did they go? And so we start filling in like where everything is. Fogg is doing better, but he's still holding the cat and everything. But it shows that magic is still there. Elliot became a professor because it was his way to kind of still hold on to his friends, because he never knows what happened to them. So he misses them like crazy. But he has Charlton there, and Charlton showed him, like, because the hedges showed him how to activate like the bracelet, what it represents. Basically, it lets him see Charlton for who he is, and not just as Hyman, but as himself. And Charlton's like, well, I know this is kind of weird. And he'll probably say, he's like, go ahead and ask it. And because the moment like Charlton ended up in Hyman's body, I was like, is Elliot and Charlton going to be a thing? And especially when he's like, please come back and everything. I was wondering if something was going to happen. And lo and behold, it does. He's like, would you ever be willing to kind of be romantic with me? And then Elliot's like, what, you mean the dude that's like 1,000 years old in the body of a pervert or whatever? And it's like, yeah, but for Charlton, it's like, but being with someone who's going to stick around, who basically knows you, and who knows so much about you. I mean, to be fair, he's literally been inside of Elliot's head, known things that Elliot probably wouldn't share with anyone else. So to see things kind of turn into that situation, and it's like, well, I was like, and Elliot's just kind of like, all right, let's kind of give this a shot and everything. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, where the hell is Hyman? He's going to be watching. And then Hyman's looking like, oh, look at those kids all happy and everything. He turns around and runs up the stairs. I'm like, pervert to the end. Just had to get in that one last pervert moment. The fact of the matter is, we also had like Katie and the hedge witches are working with moon fanatics, the lunatics. Right, the lunatics. They're the ones, because every member, they need to work in tandem with them, because it lets them know like, oh, the moon's, you better make any magic you're trying to do quickly, because the moon, she's kind of in a fit. So it's so interesting, because now they still have to work around, they found their new norm of working around the moon's new, like, how finicky she can be and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of, pretty neat. And then another aspect is, Julia and Hope and Penny. It's like, she's like, I know this isn't like the normal life you want, but I think for Penny, it's like, despite how effed up and crazy the circumstances are, we're on another damn quest and everything, it's like, if it means kind of getting that life he wants, then it's kind of like that thing of like, yeah, it might be kind of a fucked up way to get to it, but we're there. So it's like, let's go find our friends. There got to be somewhere out there, so still looking for them. So I think that's kind of a neat aspect to this as well. And then, Fall, because obviously it's like, where do you think they ended up? And obviously for Lipson, it's like, well, maybe they were used as raw materials for like the world seed and stuff like that, or maybe they got vaporized. But it's like, the fact is, Fogg is like, he's hopeful because there is still magic out there, meaning there's some wellspring out there, which is such an interesting aspect that, like Margot added that. I was like, right. Didn't think about that, because I think that had come up previously. Like, if we destroy Fillory, what about the wellspring? That means no magic out there anyway. But we see the new world that they've made and the little aspects to it. It's like Finn being like, oh, there's like trees that grow knives. There was like a pizza plate. There's a pizza thing for Josh, and there's like a field of bacon. It's like, was that a Fillory thing? It's like, no. And Alice is like, no, that's mine. I always love that. That's always been like a little thing. We never actually found out like where that came from, but just like all of a sudden they always made a point of like bacon is kind of her thing. I always thought that was just such an interesting aspect to her character. But now going forward, they have to decide like, okay, like there's no predators or any threats at this world, but like, so what is it time to let everyone out? But then Margot points out like, holy shit, we're going to have to basically make an infrastructure from the ground up. And so obviously they want to give this to Finn, because she's literally like, you literally carry the world in your snatch. And she's like, oh, that was really nice of you saying. She's like, yeah, but as a mother of this world, she passes that honor on to Margot being High King again. Because it's sad, because like her whole reign as High King, it's interesting because it kind of comes full circle too in that regard of like, well, she kind of lost the crown and was kind of like what it's like I don't know, it's just it's interesting like having to rule that whole thing about ruling alone. It played a role season 4, but you can almost make an argument maybe it ties in this regard as well, just but you know, and it's just kind of like, okay, you know, it's kind of crazy, like the circumstances they find themselves in, because it's like going forward now, things are just going to be weird. But even Josh was like, that's honestly strangely comforting, because honestly, that's kind of how they all live their lives up to this point. It's just kind of like the craziness that it is. So Margot presses the button, and that's the end of the show. And I honestly think it's, in a way, I think it's a very beautiful ending, because it's like, yeah, this is the end, but there's still more that everything does continue afterwards. It's going to be interesting, like them rebuilding this new filler and what that would mean, like, you know, because eventually, hopefully, you could hope that, you know, Julia and Hope and Penny end up finding him one day, and everyone can be reunited. And, you know, once again, like fucking having Elliot as a teacher, it's like crazy enough we saw Penny as one, to think we've got Elliot as one. It's kind of neat. I didn't even talk about it either. Freaking, it's like, oh, do you think because Elliot was wondering, like, do you think Rupert made it through Seb? And it's like, yeah, I think he's wherever he is, he's with someone that he loves. And it's like, lo and behold, he's in the house with his sister. They're reunited. And it's like, yeah, and they kind of have all that time together. You know, it's like his whole thing was being immortal and alone. I mean, granted, he was kind of not necessarily awake the entire time of his immortality, but it is nice to kind of like these two siblings reunited. And, you know, so it's kind of neat that they found each other at the same time that, you know, she's pregnant with, you know, Plum's mom. So it's for me, obviously, I'm kind of bummed to see things kind of play out this way, in the sense that, like, to know that this is the end, because it would have been so interesting to see, like, where this would have gone in, like, a 6th season to, like, kind of wrap up even more stuff. I mean, because who knows, like, what the original plan was for the 6th season, like, for this season to end on, like, what that would have meant for a 6th season. Like, it makes you wonder, like, how much was changed last minute. Like, you know, maybe this is how they always want the show to end. Because interestingly enough, this is slightly similar to the book's ending. This is coming from someone who's never read the book. I did look into it a little bit, trying to understand the ending. I won't go too much into spoilers, but the whole, like, going into a new world thing is slightly taken from the books, interestingly enough. So it took an element of the book's ending. Like I said, that's me telling you, like, the bare minimum. There's aspects, because obviously, once again, this is vastly different, because if you had to line up the book's ending with the TV show's ending, roughly the TV show, the book ends basically with season 2's finale, with just things being different. They take season 2's finale and tweak it and add elements of the series finale, and you kind of got how the book ends to a certain extent. So, like I said, without really going into ins and out, but that's more in line of where the book is. So obviously, once again, the show's going further, but to a small extent, it took elements of the end of the books to this. So I think that's I might be reading too much into it, but I like to think because of all that it kind of it works in that way. So it kind of ends off in the same vein of, like, yeah, you can tell, like, oh, there's another step to this. You just won't get to know the story, but you can fill it in with your imagination of, like, oh, what it's like to go off into a new world. So, like I said, the book ends off on that note, so it kind of is very befitting that the show would too. So, I like I said, it's the thing of, like, I'm happy to have, you know, it has a great and good ending, but at the same time, it's like, it's still the thing of, like, I'm sad to see the show end, you know. I literally made a video last week, in preparation for this, so I've already said all I needed to say, but I'll reiterate it here. I love this show. It is without a doubt my favorite fantasy show. It's easily one of my favorite shows in general, and so I love the show, and I'm so... Once again, I've said it multiple times, and I'll say it again. I consider myself so grateful to have been along this ride since the beginning. Sometimes you don't jump on certain shows quickly enough. You're like, oh, I wish I'd started watching the show soon. It's like, this is a show I can proudly say I've been literally watching since it first aired back in 2016, you know? So to see it all kind of come full circle, you know, in this regard, and, you know, I'm proud to have been a part of this show. Once again, I'm reiterating stuff. A show that made me laugh, that made me cry, that took me on this wild ass journey. You know, obviously, thank you to everyone that's been a part of this show, from cast to crew. I wish them the best in their future endeavors. But just thank you, magicians, for just being the fantastic show that you were and will continue to be, because it's still going to exist out there for people to watch it for the first time. So, but I think that's really all I want to talk about. Like I said, these moments at the end where I have to stop talking, it chokes me up a little bit, because it's like the moment I stop recording, it's almost like it's officially over, So obviously, I'd love to have conversations with you in the comments down below. I'd love to get to talk to people just about the show in general. Especially like talking to people who've read the books. I've heard a little bit here and there from people who read the books. Like I said, I've done a little bit of research because I'm not much of a book reader, but I'd love to have conversations with the people being like, oh my God. So like someone who's a fan of the show that's like, oh cool. So like, okay, so here's other elements that they kept similar from the book that they translated into the show as well. Like I love to kind of, know other stuff like that, but just even people who are just fans of the show, like let's talk about some of our favorite moments. I just want to keep talking about the show. I hope you can join me in those conversations and stuff like that, about the whole thing. So, but yeah, I think it's time to it's time to wrap this up. Sadly, but till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.